I believe that the entire board received a memo from Ms. Leslie Torres regarding the status of high-pressure gas here that should be delivered to Roosevelt Island as part of the Cornell project at the Goldwater site. It also has implications for the rest of the island. Cola Hospital will be tapping into this high-pressure gas when it's delivered here to the island. As well as RIAC is interested in participating in that service as well, because we have various facilities that are tied into the steam plant. We have a follow-up meeting with Con Edison tomorrow at 9 o'clock at Con Edison's offices at 4 Irving Place. This is separate from, this is with Cornell, EDC, Mayor's Office, and others. This is separate from a meeting we've had with the various property owners from the island to discuss the high-pressure gas. That meeting was held, I think, late March, I believe March 22nd, in which we introduced the various property owners here on the island. River Cross, Island House, Octagon, Eastview, actually, Roosevelt Landings, Southtown, and others, to inform them about the service that will be delivered. And they've expressed interest in tapping into that service. Each of the buildings are in various stages of doing their own project, and this was an effort to bring that all together and coordinate the work that we'll be doing here with Con Edison as well as with the other buildings.
Is there a time period in Con Ed's schedule when the island is vulnerable? Is there a hiatus in service switching from one to another?
No, the island's being serviced by medium pressure gas, and that will continue to exist. What they plan to introduce is a separate line. Eventually they'll have 2 high-pressure gas services, one coming from Queens, the other coming from Manhattan, but throughout the entire time, medium pressure gas will be in place until they make the switch over.
How does this steam plant fit into all of this? I don't know that much about the whole thing, so it's sort of like a quick tutorial on what it means to us.
Okay, well, the steam plant is RIAC property. It services our facility, Sports Park, the bus garage, the AVAC building. But its primary purpose is to fulfill the needs of the 2 hospitals, the Goldwater campus to the south and the Cola campus to the north. It's operated and maintained by the Health and Hospitals Corporation in order to fulfill the needs, the heating needs of the 2 hospitals. We're a beneficiary of that. We don't pay anything for its operation and maintenance. We just get free steam to heat our facilities.
Didn't you have a study about retrofitting that a while ago?
That was done, I believe, late 2007, early 2008.
That was the most recent of 3.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, I kept hearing about studies.
Right.
10-year intervals.
Right.
Should we have another one before we?
Well, we're in discussions.
Steve says yes.
Well, I mean, that would most likely, I'm not saying yes, I'm just, you know.
Okay.
We're in discussions.
Excuse me one second,
Sure.
let the record show Michael Shimazaki has arrived, and
Left her.
turning the meeting over to you. We just started on the steam plant.
And,
Started getting an update. Oh, and I'm sorry, Dr. Grimm has arrived also.
Okay.
Mike, what are we gonna
What's that?
discuss?
So what do you think, Mike?
Absolutely.
We're discussing the first item, high pressure gas.
Right.
That high pressure gas, and we were right up to the point of, that there was a study done for the steam plant several years ago, and the fact that we probably ought to have an updated study. What does that entail, and how long does it take to do one of those?
So I recall that study took a few months. They did an assessment of the steam plant capacity and the different demands for the different facilities. So I would imagine it will take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to do another study again. But we're in early discussions with HHC and in terms of the steam plant. So we can look at the steam plant, if we look at its viability of maintaining it. Again, we don't maintain it, the Health and Hospital Corporation does that, so that would be something that would need to be addressed, the financial implications for staffing and maintaining the steam plant. Whether we do a different type of fuel source, right now it uses number 6 oil, and anything that we do to improve the steam plant would move away from number 6, or we probably even tap into natural gas as an option to generate the steam that would heat the various buildings. But that's all part of the discussion.
Are we in absolute lockstep with Cornell with what they're eventually gonna be doing?
Because it's not gonna be too long before they're here, so I wouldn't wanna see us making any big investment in something that's not gonna work for them. Like, I'd like to share the costs of whatever we're doing.
Right. I was at the town hall meeting, and they mentioned that they are still in the early stages of their development and their planning. They haven't hired an architectural firm that will take it in terms of developing the campus and so on, but we've had some preliminary meetings, and it's all conceptual now. Everything sounds like a good idea, but it has to be flushed out.
But I think we're gonna, whatever we do will be with, invite them to the table. And I think we're going to do something.
But let's get the engineers, not the architects, because the architects always have grand ideas.
No, but what we're looking at, we're kind of something that's gonna have to be done kind of soon, because this, the Cornell kind of brought everything to the table quicker than we
Right.
thought. So we're,
The
we're
other
obviously
challenge-
gonna have them involved in the process. If possible.
Remember years ago, they did an environmental study of the current state of the building. And the reason why I'm asking is if we do any major work to the building, as far as replacing the generation facilities, tunneling out to bring in gas or something like that, that building has been there for many, many years, has had petroleum storage and other kind of materials, so it's probably infiltration of various nasty chemicals
Right.
into the soil and the ground around the building,
Well,
so if we have to open
they-
it up.
But they check the tanks, they're required to check tanks for any leakage. I mean, that's something that they do.
Well, when you're that's nonsense, because, I mean, anything gets spilled, that's been there for so long, it's been spilled over years, it leaks down into the sub-basements. The combustion of the materials, the maintenance of the thing, with the solvents that are used to lubricate the generating systems. There's probably leakage from the steam plants. At the time that was constructed, it was probably used that numerical substance, asbestos, in its construction. So if we have to do any major work to replace the way it generates power, whether it's continued for steam or it's converted over to electricity in a big way, and it's switched over from oil storage to gas, that's going to involve, digging up some of the systems, replacing some of the core components of the foundations, and that might trigger us into an environmental impact study.
Absolutely. We would have to do a phase 1 environmental of the site, and to determine, and phase 1 basically is an assessment of the existing conditions. And depending on what is discovered, we would have to go into a phase 2, which would be remediation. That would be the first step. And this is all part of the conversation that we need to have with HHC as the operators and maintainers of the steam plant for, I think, since 2 decades now. So, I mean, it pre-existed, that relationship between the steam plant and HHC pre-existed REAC.
Pre-existing Roosevelt.
Right.
How are the buildings gonna be affected?
Which
The
buildings?
The residential buildings,
The wire buildings in particular?
any of the buildings, Wire, Southtown, Oakville,
In terms of high-pressure gas?
in terms of anything.
Well,
Financially,
right now, the wire buildings have electric heat. And from what I understand and what I've learned from the various property managers and owners of the buildings, is that there are different stages of analyzing the conversion from electric to some type of other source, primarily gas. The problem is that the gas service that is delivered into the buildings won't be sufficient to service the demands in terms of a heat load for each of the buildings. So I think each of the buildings are going to, well, they're going to do a load analysis, which was required from Con Edison. We're doing one as well. So the load analysis basically is a calculation of what your heat demand will be, or your demand for service will be. Con Edison will take that information and calculate the appropriate level of service that they need to deliver. And then after that, the buildings will have to finance the conversion costs. There are programs out there, from what I understand, that would offset some of those costs, but that would be relationship between Con Edison and the individual buildings.
Shouldn't they be part of the meeting then, if Cornell and EDC and the mayor's office are going, aren't they kind of look at that as part of the pie? Just
The
we have
focus of
building.
tomorrow's meeting and the meetings before that was Roosevelt Island and Cornell. We had a separate meeting with Con Edison to talk about the various property owners and Con Edison. So we otherwise, it's a big meeting already with Cornell. There are probably like 15 to 20 people in that meeting, and it would be adding another 20 to 25% more. So we wanted to focus on just the Cornell, and then we're focusing on the property owners.
I have nightmares about the whole privatization issue that we have, and we never got everybody in the room together. For years, we went on with having one meeting with this group and one meeting with that group, and then when we decided on one thing here, well, the other guys didn't like that piece of it. So I just wanna make sure from the get-go that we have the main players
Absolutely,
there
and
in all
that,
these meetings.
when I attended the first meeting on this particular topic, I brought it to the city's attention and also to Con Edison's attention that, hey, there are other folks that may be interested in tapping into this gas service, meaning the wire buildings and the other buildings here, as well as RIAC. And they were not cognizant of that. So that's when we had a separate meeting, and it was very informative. We had good representation from folks here on the island. But when I raised the issue the first time, the city did say the focus right now is with Cornell and so on. You can meet with Con Edison, but let's focus on Cornell. And that's because the
But do we agree with that? I mean, the city can say that, that's nice, but shouldn't we be saying it's part of us? We agree on
Absolutely,
the representing
absolutely,
these
and that's why we
buildings.
had the separate meeting, and it was a very good meeting, and everyone was informed, and I believe the individual buildings are working on their load letters to submit to Con Edison. At the end of the day, they're all gonna be part of the same project. Con Edison needs to understand how many people are gonna require the service, so they can provide the right level of supply to the island.
Three things. One, the steam plant is involved in three functions: steam, electricity, and it's gonna be part of the gas system. Who currently uses the steam output?
The hospitals?
Hospital.
The hospitals and RIAC.
Okay, and what do we use the steam for exactly?
For RIAC,
Yeah.
we use the steam to heat our buildings, the sports park, the bus garage, and the AVAC building.
Okay, so there's a dependency right there. So
Right.
if that goes away from the steam generating facility, we gotta figure out how we're gonna replace that.
Absolutely.
Electricity gets fed into the grid on the island. So if there's any change to the either the total amount of electricity available to us or the cost of the delivered electricity, that impacts the island, particularly because most of these guys are electrically generated. And the operation of RIAC is affected because we get electricity at some rate from them, which is, I don't know if it's equivalent to what's paid on the grid or less, probably less than we pay on the grid.
It's less, but
Okay,
but
so.
all of that is part of the load letters that we're supplying to Con Edison.
Okay, so all the folks that are affected, that is, the wire buildings and the other buildings require electricity, so their electrical rates potentially go up. And if we're gonna be switching our heating systems over from steam to gas to electricity, or some other form, then that increases the loading on the grid here, right?
But Michael, I think we're jumping the gun. Right now, we're meeting with ESD, Con Edison, to find out, try to coordinate with ESD as, with.
The reason why I bring this up is the same problem with the tram. You're meeting with them about what?
We're
What
meeting-
questions have you thought through that you need to drill into them to get answers from them directly? What are your required bargaining positions that say, these are how our residents gonna be impacted if you do this? And they say, well, that's not our problem. That's gonna be Cornell Street. So no, it is a problem
No,
for us.
Well, you're assuming we're gonna say that, that's not what we're gonna say. We're going in there to the meeting to find out, first of all, what, ESD and Cornell, and coordinate with them. We know what we need to do with the hospital, we're meeting with the hospital.
Okay.
We also know the situation with the wire building, so, Fernando, we had everybody involved with Con Edison. Now we're meeting like intergovernmental agencies with ESD and Cornell, because they're gonna be, we wanna coordinate with them. And after that meeting, we'll have a much better idea exactly what the situation is, and then we'll incorporate everybody that needs to be incorporated.
Okay.
I mean, this is what needs to be done. We can't have everybody at every meeting until we really find out to know
The idea
exactly
though is
where
that
we
if
need
you
to go.
don't have everyone at the meeting, the various stakeholders who know what issues are important to them, then you have to walk into the meeting knowing what their issues are. So that you can
Mike,
present.
Mike,
that's
excuse me,
understood.
excuse me, sir. I believe it is understood. And to sit here in an operations committee meeting and set an agenda for a hypothetical meeting, that you set up long in advance, may not be the best use of our time today. I just did a quick calculation, and if we spend 15 minutes per subject, we'll be here for a little less than 7 hours. I mean, you're only making the observation.
As long as it's lessons.
Well, we got two topics with the steam plant we also addressed here.
Right.
So, that's two items there.
But basically, Michael, and Margie, I understand, and those issues are being raised, like I mentioned earlier. Con Edison and the city were not aware of the other stakeholders that may be affected by this. I brought it to their attention. Con Edison agreed to have a meeting. Sanjeev was one of the representatives from Rivercross at that meeting, as well as others. And everyone was pretty much happy with what's happening so far. They're aware, we know what's happening, the property owners know what's happening, they have their homework to do, they have to provide it to Con Edison, and Con Edison has to take all of that information or data, do their calculations, and give us back, okay, this is what's going to happen.
Okay, I guess we can move it along, but I don't want to underemphasize that a change in the electricity infrastructure rates for the folks, particularly in Roosevelt Landing, because of the poor energy efficiency of that building, could have catastrophic impacts to those residents, particularly because the landlord is pushing for sub-metering in a building that is extremely highly energy inefficient and leaking. So any change in their electrical rates would have catastrophic impacts to those folks.
We understand that, Michael.
Okay. So.
Given that we have Sanjeev here and the other buildings, are there any issues that we haven't brought up that you're aware of?
I think the issues have been brought up. I think what is required is a comprehensive study that includes everything, not just what REAC is doing, not just what Cornell is doing, although Cornell is going to drive the load. But really it's the 4 wire buildings, because they're the most dependent on electricity. They will need the natural gas service. Now, there's a tremendous benefit if we sort of pool our resources together, because what Mike was saying that could affect the electric rates, actually the electric rates, we have an opportunity to bring them down if we share the load. Now, this all sounds very good if we have a big study, and I think we're in some process of getting a study. I don't know what.
Yeah, we're in the process, we're actually not just looking at gas, there's other things we're
Right.
gonna be looking at.
Right.
And, it's, first thing is, with everything involved, the gas situation with supply, with Con Edison, and also there's possible, other possibilities of retrofitting the steam plant that we're also gonna be looking at.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so,
The only point I was making is that the newer buildings have no real need for this, at least from what I've heard in our meetings. The only need is in terms of the new construction that's gonna go on in Southtown. The newer buildings have their own electric, very modern, fuel cell, this, that, and the other. They're very well taken care of. So it's basically comes down to REAC, Cornell, and the wire buildings that need to come together. And the load letters, although it sounds very good, different buildings are in various stages of coming up with their own analysis. My impression is, I know I'm from Rivercross, but we are very far advanced in this kind of analysis. The other 2 buildings are not. They're just exploring these things.
Right.
And we tried to put our load letter into Con Ed system, and their website doesn't work. So, it sounds very good, and they will not accept load letters in any other form than in the form of inputting it into their website. So there's some, they asked for all this information, we're ready to give it to them, but they're not ready to receive it in the form they asked. So, there are a lot of disconnects here.
There's other questions we have to deal with from the REAC standpoint. One is what your buildings are doing, but there's the grid underneath the island. So that if we change the way the electricity is delivered on the island, or the way the gas is delivered on the island, that we have to open up roads and tunnels to
That would
pull.
not be an issue, because the electricity is not gonna be affected, but natural gas will be. And the way Con Ed is doing it, even though they'll be bringing high-pressure gas, it'll not affect low-pressure delivery anywhere, because they'll put sleeves.
Yeah, there's
over.
regulators and other things, but it's still,
Right.
we have to make sure that we're set.
Right.
If we change the way the grid is delivered under the island, then that could affect what's under there, based on how we step up and step down the current under the building.
Mike,
We need to
you
move
probably
on.
know that, you're Con Ed.
Yeah, the same folks who took down the entire northeast corridor because they didn't have the proper switching in place,
Well, we're
didn't have the
not gonna
proper
solve that
controls in
problem
place.
at an
We're not gonna
operations
solve that
committee
problem
meeting.
here, but we're concerned about what happens on the island and what it's gonna cost us to open up the streets and everything else with them, and what we have to take out of service and how it's gonna impact as the residents of the island.
I'm
That's why
sure
it's
that the
coming up.
process will fulfill
Okay.
every statement you just made.
That they haven't had a great track record so far, so. Good Shepherd's roof.